TommyDavis, his wife, Shannon, and we got to spend this morning as a board where we split everybody up and spent some time alone with Dr. Davis and his wife today. This morning, made for breakfast. We did a tour of the elementary school, the middle school, the high school, our multi-purpose complex, and the Shirey house, okay? So that we could let them kind of get a overall feel of what we do at Winfield and what we're all about, and let him see the fixtures that we, and the good facilities that we have. But not only that, we wanted him to meet our teachers, our students, our administrators, and it never fails to amaze me when we go to our schools that we don't have to have our teachers to be scripted to do anything. They want to come out and they want to talk to our visitors and they want to tell them the wonderful things that are going on in the classroom and in our school. And not only that, we've got a lot of students that do the same thing, okay? And we've got students that are confident and they will let you know the answer to the question if they're asked, and sometimes they tell you the answer before they're asked, okay? Which is good. And we have a wonderful school system, but we wanted to show Dr. Davis what we had to offer here, okay? And now we're in a situation where we want to hear his responses to some questions that we need answered, okay? And we want to hear from him. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So we're going to start this interview. And Dr. Davis, I want to, of course, you've already been introduced to all of our board, but we want to tell you how the sequence is going to go tonight. We have a series of questions. You've been given those questions in advance so that you can prepare for that. We're going to be asking the entire question. There may be some 2 and 3 parts to one question, but we'll read the entire question first, okay? We're going to do it kind of round robin. So everyone has a designated question. We'll move down the line and back around until we're through, okay? Now I want you to take as much time as you need to answer the questions. If you need a break, let us know. If you want to stand up and move around, you can do that too, okay? So anything you need, let us know. But we're going to begin. Okay, first question. Tell us about your background as an educator and how your previous experiences have prepared you to be the superintendent of Winfield City Schools.
Well, thank you very much. And before I jump into that answer, I do want to say thank you so much, Board, for inviting me to participate in this process. I have been very, very much impressed with what I've seen today. It is true. There's excitement throughout this school system everywhere we've gone. There's just a buzz, and people are proud and excited to talk about this school system, and that is very impressive. So I've enjoyed meeting the teachers and the students and seeing all the facilities, and I want you to know before we even begin that there's much to be proud of, and I appreciate your work because I know you play a pivotal role in that. My background, basically, I'm in my 30th year as an educator. In those 30 years, I've only been in 2 school systems. I spent 10 years in the first school system where I taught K through 12. I did music, so elementary, middle school, and high school. The second system I'm in now is Decatur. Been there this is my 20th year. In addition to having experience elementary, middle, and high school, I also have experience with pre-K and adults through church music. I work with younger students in the children's choir, and then I do adult choir at the church I'm at now. In that 30 years, 14 of those years have been as an administrator, and I've served as an assistant principal and principal at a middle school that had roughly 830 students. Right now, I serve as a central office supervisor, and in our system total, we have about 8,600 students, 17 schools, 5 of which are secondary. I do secondary curriculum, so I coordinate the curriculum, the assessment, and all the matters that relate to those schools for those 5 schools. In my position as a supervisor, in addition to the curriculum instruction, I also, in the past, have served as our career tech director. I did that for 2.5 years until we split that position into 2 positions because we were combining some of our career tech programs into a new career tech facility. We've just recently built 2 new high schools, and so in that process, we're converting one of our old campuses into a career tech center. So we needed someone who could focus solely on that center and act as a supervisor and as a principal until it is a cost center of its own and we qualify for a principal unit there. I've also supervised our Title II federal program, so that's the Teacher Professional Development. develop that budget. I approve all the leave regarding that. So teachers who are seeking professional leave, that goes through my office. I also head up our counseling and guidance, supervise those programs for our secondary folks. I've already mentioned testing and accountability and textbooks. Now that's a long list of things that I do in our system, but like you, we try to be cost effective in our admin positions so that we can focus most of our efforts on our classroom positions. We'd rather invest in teacher units than administrative units whenever possible. But I do want to point out to you that in my position currently, I oversee a budget of about $940,000. So that's the budgeting process and the purchasing, signing off on those purchases. When I was overseeing Career Tech, that was actually about $1.1 million that I oversaw annually in what we did. In addition to that, like you, we seek out grants to be able to implement programs that we're interested in. I've worked with our Decatur City Schools Foundation on some of these grants. I've worked with our local legislative representatives on some of the grants and with groups like AIDT. And those grants to date have been roughly about $955,000 that I have helped acquire for our system to further some of our programs. Besides the school, or as in conjunction with my school responsibilities, I serve on the Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors for the Decatur-Morgan County Board, Chamber of Commerce. I've served on the North Alabama Workforce Development Alliance. That is a workforce development group comprised mainly of our industry partners in Decatur. Decatur has a very heavy industry focus, and so with that, through my Career Tech supervision process and being on part of this, anytime we met with the Chamber of Commerce or met with that NADA was the acronym for that, any of their needs, I always took those needs, brought them back into our school system and implemented so that we could start developing the pipeline that's going to feed the jobs in our area. And also the Chamber Workforce Committee, as a part of the Chamber of Commerce, I've served on that. I serve on that as well, same idea. One of the things I would like you to know in regards to safety in our school system, as a school level administrator, our school, through the plans that we had in process, our school safety plan, we won the Attorney General's Safe School Awards 3 consecutive years. That is a process that we take very seriously in Decatur. Our district is actually, if I'm not mistaken, the most awarded district in the state of Alabama in regards to school safety. We have actually a position in our central office that is dedicated to that school safety discipline and that kind of thing. And through the processes that we involve, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later on in one of the other questions about what it takes to do that. I've been involved in several technology initiatives at the school level. As a building administrator, I felt it was important that our students be exposed to technology that they were going to encounter as they moved on through high school, into the college, and especially into the workforce. So I've always been on the forefront whenever I could be in introducing our students to the technology.
The next question is, what do you see as the role of the superintendent as it relates to the employee group, the students, the community, and the school board?
Well, the way I see, as far as employees go, one of the main things that the superintendent needs to do is to facilitate a positive culture. And to me, that comprises of three main elements: a positive rapport, trust, and then the overall climate. That positive rapport are those minute-to-minute interactions, those interpersonal interactions with everyone involved in the school system: teachers, students, parents, community members. You have to take those interactions to build trust over time. Trust, it just takes time to develop, but as people interact with you and they understand that you display integrity, reliability, honesty, and competence, because you have to be able to do the job, that's where trust comes from. And the climate, to me, is that day-to-day, the mood, the feeling in the school system. And you always have to be out and about. You want to be engaged with the schools, engaged with the community to find out where everybody is in that process, and then take steps if you need to figure out what's going on with the climate and try to adjust. Additional thing is that the superintendent needs to have a vision for the future. You know, we can't rest on what we've got going on today. We have to be able to look ahead, to build and prepare for the future, almost to be able to foresee or forecast through different means. And it's very important in our changing times. We have so much going on right now. We're told in the workforce that we are preparing our students now for jobs that haven't even been created yet. And it takes a visionary leader to help prepare students for jobs that are not even in the workforce right now. As far as students go, the best phrase I've heard for that is the superintendent needs to be the gatekeeper of excellence. They need to be the one that's always looking, striving towards student growth and achievement, and there are several ways that you can impact that. One of those is staff recruitment. You always want to recruit the best teachers for your school system, and you have fabulous teachers here in Winfield, and my job would be to be sure that we are keeping that up, keeping that reputation for excellence alive. You also want to be able to establish clear instructional and curricular goals. And the reason you have to do that is because those are changing as well. I was at a State Department meeting not long ago, and we've been given a heads up that the math courses of study are changing. And not only will they be changing, but that the math pathways for the high school will be changing. We'll have a year to look at those to see what those changes are and compare to where we are now, what the courses of study look like now, and what those changes might be. And we have to come up with a plan on how we're going to address that as a school system so that we're not caught by surprise when they do go into effect, not this coming year, but the year after. The superintendent, on behalf of the students, has to maintain the focus on quality. Instruction, extracurriculars, facilities. You always want to have the best that you can have in regards to all of those areas so that the students are always getting the best experience possible. And along with that, you have to manage the resources and the finances and the facilities for the maximum impact. And that includes a lot of long-range planning. You can't rest on your laurels. You have to look at where you are and plan for the future. Things are great now, but it takes a lot of work to maintain excellence. For the community, the superintendent is the liaison, is the face of the school, for the school system, and you have to work with community groups. And this is something that I've been able to do in my current position as a superintendent. I would absolutely want to do this. And you're engaged with all kinds of leaders throughout the school and the community. For instance, right now, I'm on the Chamber Board of Directors. I've already mentioned the North Alabama Workforce Development Alliance and the Quality Education Committee. I've served on our Princess Theater Arts Advisory Committee. The Princess Theater is basically Decatur's version of the Pastime Theater. We also have a partnership with the Princess Theater and the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. that allows us to give violin instruction to all of our second graders in Decatur. I'm on the Decatur Youth Symphony Board. I was the founding conductor of the Decatur Youth Symphony. We started with 18 violinists. We now serve 400 students. And we do, one of the programs that we have is called Breakfast with the Classics. We go into our Title I elementary schools, and the Decatur Youth Symphony provides free instruction for those students and a group for them to be in. And we provide them an instrument as well. So that's one of the things that we look forward to. In civic clubs, I'm in the Decatur Kiwanis Club. I'm on the board of directors for the Kiwanis Club. And then I've recently been a part of an initiative that involved the Chamber of Commerce and the Morgan County Economic Development Association. That was the ACT Work-Rated Communities Partnership. What that does is it sets a standard throughout the community. All of our seniors take the ACT Work Keys, and by partnering with the industry and those results from the work keys, the industry can know for a student coming out of high school what their work readiness levels are in any particular area. And we've been a part of that. I know Tuscaloosa is already certified as an ACT work-rated community. I know there are counties surrounding Tuscaloosa that are going through that process. At the current time, Morgan County is the only county in North Alabama that is working through that process, and I've been able to be a part of that. The thing about being involved in the community is not just involvement, it's that you're out there talking to people, you hear things, it's an open door, you can have conversations, and that provides input for decisions that you have to make within the school system. It's important to be involved in communities to hear their input and to get that guidance. And lastly, for the board, and I know I'm taking a long time on this question, but to me this is an important aspect, a very important aspect of this interview. For the board, the superintendent has to be a communicator. They have to be able to share with the board the things that are happening in the school system, keep them informed of successes and areas of opportunity and potential issues. They are the facilitator, the keeper of the board policy. The board makes the policy. The superintendent needs to be sure it's carried out as it's intended. And they serve as the liaison between the board and the faculty and staff. And again, it involves them in the community events, involves the board and the school system where it's needed and where it's appropriate, and especially to involve them in celebrations. I think that's an important aspect of what the superintendent does.
What is your greatest professional disappointment, and what did you learn from that disappointment?
I came from a highly successful band program. I can tell you this, I got into education because of my middle school band director. I knew before I left middle school that I was going to be a teacher. Now, I come from a family of educators, but I knew it's just what I was meant to do at that point. I came from a very successful high school band program, went to the University of Alabama, Roll Tide, on a partial on a partial music scholarship. But when I came out of school and took my first job, I made the mistake that a lot of first-year teachers do, and then in that I tried to be my high school band director. Now, I took over a struggling band program. I came from an established, successful program. I took over a struggling band program. I tried to be my high school band director, and I very quickly realized that wouldn't work. It was not working. I wasn't connecting, and we weren't making the kinds of growth that I felt like we needed to, and I began to reflect, and I realized that I was trying to imitate a style that did not match my personality. Once I figured that out, I began to be myself, and it just changed. Everything changed, and the kids began to appreciate what we're doing. I took steps to give them ownership, and one of the things that I did about that same time was, in the spring, my juniors, which would be my next year's seniors, they would pick our show design. The show concept was theirs. Now, I was there to guide them along the way and say, now remember, it's got to please the crowd, but it's also got to please the judges when we go to contests. But when I did that, it turned them loose, and they began to own that band program. And they would come to me at times and say, you know what, Mr. Davis, we're not ready. We need more practice time. They were asking me for practice time. Now, that's unusual. But it all went back to the lesson that I learned was I have to be me. In leadership, I can learn from other folks, I can borrow ideas from other folks, but I have to implement them in the way that fits my personality. I like to encourage folks, I like to build them up, I strengthen, I like to coach to better performance. Now, I have high expectations, but for me, it's best if we implement those high expectations in a positive culture.
Describe your decision-making style and give a few examples of strategies you have used in different situations.
Well, I'm one of those people that when there are important decisions to be made, I always want as much information as I can give. So the first thing I always do is try to research, find out. I want to understand all sides of any decision that has to be made, whether it's an issue or just a path that we want to explore. I want to understand every component of it. The best model that I've seen is explained in like it's a window pane. You have panes of glass, and each pane, if you look through each one individually, is a slightly different perspective on an issue. And if you think of that in terms of stakeholders, you have the board is one pane of glass. You have supervisors, administrators would be a different pane of glass. Teachers have a slightly different perspective. Parents have a slightly different perspective. Your athletic and band booster groups, they are going to have a different perspective of what's happening. You've always need to consider from your elected officials, your city officials, and representatives what their perspective might be, and a very important one is business and industry. And once you have all those slightly different perspectives, you can step back and take a big picture view and combine all of that into it's quite all right. That's okay. Combine it into the big picture so that you can make the best decision possible. But without considering all the different perspectives, I don't think you can. Now, one thing that I have learned in 14 years as an administrator is that there are times when your decisions are time-bound. In other words, you can't take too long. You want to collaborate as much as possible, but there are times when you don't have as much time as you want. And when that's the case, my thought is that you have to make the best decision possible with the information you have on hand. And that really comes into play whether it's having to deal with safety issues or anything of that nature. If there's a time when you have to act immediately, you have to act on the best information that you have available. As far as examples of that, as a school principal, I always had a building leadership team, so that was my way to gather input from the different groups within the school. We always had grade level representatives, and we spread those out among the areas. So there were academics, there were extracurriculars. There were always folks there that were able to represent the different points of view. As a central office administrator, I do the same thing, but usually with teams of administrators. So my secondary administrators, if there's something coming up, I want to be sure I get information from my middle school principal, my principals, my junior high principal, and my high school principal before we make a decision.
A superintendent has to have tremendous passion, belief, and commitment. How do you know when it's time to drive something forward and when it's time to listen and learn? And how do you balance the need for authentic collaboration with requirements from individual leadership?
Well, I'm very passionate about public education. I'm just as passionate as your teachers and your students, by the way. I've told you that I serve on the chamber board, and we had our last meeting this past Wednesday, and one of the things that I do, one of the roles that I serve is I'm an education liaison, so I get to share the things that are happening in our school system. And so I was able to share some really wonderful things that are going on in Decatur right now with our business leaders. And once I finished with that, first of all, they love to hear what's going on in the school system because, again, that's their future workforce. But then several of them made comments that they were so glad to see the passion that we have in our school system, just like you have here in Winfield. I believe collaboration is extremely important part of our process. You know, Stephen Covey, one of his tenets is that you have to seek first to understand and then be understood. That's the way I like to start. I like to understand from everyone else's point of view, like I said, that window pane model, and then try to be understood. I like to gather information and build a consensus so that when we're about to take a big step, I want to build consensus. There's a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "A genuine leader is not a searcher of consensus, but a molder of consensus." And in that, I think he means that you mold consensus by informing and educating everyone involved in a process. If you're looking at, a program you're going to establish or something that needs to be implemented into the school system, you get that consensus, you build the consensus, and when you have that critical mass, you move. And that's what we often do, but then we forget sometimes a very important step is that you have to reevaluate at periodic times. And after you reevaluate, you have to see, is this something we need to continue? Is it something we need to modify? Or do we need to just stay the course? And that's a very important part of the process. To me, no matter what you're doing, when you're implementing programs or making decisions like this, you've always got to balance it against the core question, and that is, are we doing what's best for students? That's going to drive everything that I do.
Okay. Describe how you would obtain support from the Board of Education for candidates you intend to recommend for employment. Please also discuss the most difficult personnel problem you have ever dealt with and how you resolve the issue.
Well, our mantra in Decatur is hire early and hire well. So we go out early. We go to recruiting to college fairs, and we go out and we try to recruit the best we can. If we know of good teachers out there, we want to get them into our school system. As far as informing the board, I think important communication, open communication with the board is an important element of what we do. One of the first things we would do would be to establish those lines of communication between the superintendent and the board members. When it comes to personnel or even board agendas, I know one of our school systems nearby us, Madison City Schools, one of the things that they do is they set up a time for board members. Once the agenda has been set for a board meeting, they set up time for board members to come in and ask any questions of the people who have items on that agenda, to ask any clarifying questions that they need. Not asking for votes or input from the board, just a chance for the board members to clear up anything that they're not sure about. I think that's would be something that we could possibly look at as a way to open to be sure those channels of communication are open with the board members. As far as difficult personnel issues, anytime you have adverse employment action, it's not easy. There's never an easy adverse employment action in my experience. Ultimately, you want to be able to grow teachers and help them get to where they need to be. And there have been many times that I've been able to do this with our teachers. If we have someone who's not performing well, you start with very clear conversation. You have to be honest about where they are as an educator. And then you need to give them steps, strategies to try, but then you've also got to provide the support. And as long as, in many of the times that I've done this, we've been able to improve a teacher's professional career through that process. But there, are some times, and you asked for the most difficult, I've had times, a time in particular, where I had a young teacher that was not performing very well, and I followed that process. This teacher had management and instruction issues. We started with conversations. Hey, can you try this? I think this is a good idea, something you might want to do. Things didn't improve, so we sat down and came up with an improvement plan. And so we began this process of being sure that everybody was very clear through documentation as to what we felt needed to be the way to address the things that were going on. Again, very clear, specific strategies to try and the support to be able to try those. Unfortunately, in that instance, it didn't work out, and we did wind up non-renewing this particular teacher. That's not what I like to do, and like I said, that's not an easy decision to make, but sometimes you have to make that decision because in the end, again, the focus is what is best for the students in the school system, and you're making a decision that could adversely impact them more than it would impact that teacher.
What is your plan for boosting and keeping morale among employees high?
Well, building morale and culture is it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-time event. And I know sometimes people make the mistake of saying, hey, if I can do this one thing, it should take care of it all. You have to be very, very intentional in the process. And for me, it starts with that personal level. I like to be out interacting with teachers and administrators, let them get to know me. I want to get to know them. I had a great time interacting with several teachers today. You have to get to know everyone, and you have to celebrate successes, even if it's small things. Among the other things that I'm doing right now, I'm subbing for one of our principals. She's been out on surgery, and so I'm getting to be middle school principal again in addition to everything else I'm doing. And it's been great to go around the building and walk in classrooms and see what's going on, and then see a teacher later in the day and say, hey, I really enjoyed what I saw you doing in that classroom. I had one in particular. We're doing Endless Opportunities this week. The Chamber sponsors this program where we take all of our 8th graders to a central location, business and industry. They set up booths about potential career options for our students. We do that at the 8th grade because when they go into 9th grade, they're making course choices that will impact their career decisions. But I walked through this classroom and the teacher was just talking about all the great things the students were going to see and the possible career options that they were going to have. And I got to say to her, I got to first of all tell the chamber, I want you to know that this is having an impact in our school system. That was one of the things I was celebrating with the chamber this week, because what they were doing is helping our students celebrate their futures or plan their futures. And I was able to tell this teacher, hey, I bragged on you to the Chamber of Commerce today and got to tell them the wonderful things that you're doing in your classroom regarding careers and how it's going to impact our students. At the school and system level, you have to recognize the individual successes and also the group successes, and there's lots of ways to do that. When you get to that level, you would involve media like the newspaper and other avenues, the social media. One of the things that we've done recently, we had great success with our AP test this past year because of a program we're involved with. So we've been announcing our students who made qualifying scores on AP exams at football games. And that's just another way to inform everybody what's going on. And what it does, not only affirms the students, but it affirms what's happening in the classroom with those teachers. We do things like celebration luncheons. We involve our PTA, our local businesses, and many of our local restaurants will feed our faculty for a day, a lunch, to celebrate special occasions. And we can also tell you this, last year I stepped in to serve as sponsor of our Decatur-Austin Robotics Coalition. We're involved in BEST competition. It's a robotics competition. It's a nationwide thing. We won our hub. We've had great success over the years. I had a teacher that wanted to retire from robotics. I didn't have a sponsor to take her place, so I stepped in and filled in. And we went to Auburn. We competed against schools from 6 different states, over 60 different schools, and we won the robotics portion of that competition. When we got back, we celebrated in a variety of ways. One of those was our board recognized all of our students through a board resolution. And then the city council recognized our success through a city council resolution. And then our local state representative, Arthur Orr, brought a resolution from the state senate to recognize with them. So those kinds of celebrations, they reaffirm the students, but they also reaffirm what's going on in the classroom with the teachers.
High performance by students and accountability are priorities for us. How would you assess the current student performance levels in our school system? How would you assess the effectiveness of our teachers and programs?
Well, I think one of the first steps in assessing the programs in the school is to do exactly what I did today. Get in the school, see what's going on. I love to see firsthand what's going on in classrooms, talk to the teachers, the sponsors of programs, the coaches, the band directors. Had a chance to meet all those guys, a lot of those guys today. I want to see firsthand because this brings meaning to the numbers when you start looking at data. I know most of us, when we talk about assessing programs, we jump straight to data and those numbers, the number crunching. But without the frame of reference with what's going on in the schools, it's hard to really bring meaning to all that data. Sometimes you can look at numbers and they may tell you one picture, but when you understand what's happening in the school, it deepens your meaning. So when you do look at the data, you want to look at data from all possible sources, not just one or two. And you want to look for patterns, and you have to go deeper than just that surface level. When I look at data for our school system, I dig down into the different elements. For instance, the state, we just started the pre-ACT last May, and they sprung that on us at the last minute. And but when we got our data back, we looked at the big picture, but then we started digging down into the skills that make up the different elements. For instance, in the English, there's production of writing, the knowledge of language, and the conventions of standard English. And when we analyze those areas, we can see where there might be areas of improvement within our structural program. I tell our administrators all the time, the best data in the world is meaningless unless you use it to drive instructional decisions. And so that's what I would like to do.
Expectations for student achievement for all children is high in Winfield, and eliminating the achievement gap is a moral commandment. What approaches would you pursue? What leadership and guidance would you provide to ensure that these approaches are properly evaluated and adjusted over time to meet changing student needs? Please describe any successes you have had in these areas.
This is something we've been doing in middle school for a long time, and that's we look at the data down to the student level. So we look at each individual student's performance. We dig down into and we try to look at those patterns. We use data to diagnose the strengths and the areas of need, and then we develop plans for those students. And it might be things that we try in the classroom, whether it's that tier 1, the first level of instruction, or tier 2, where we pull out small groups while students are working independently. But we scaffold in missing skills. We spiral throughout the year things that need to be reminded of. And so we're touching on important things throughout the year. I was in a classroom today, and they're about to start fractions, and fractions is one of those things that they're gonna work from now in third or fourth grade all the way till they graduate from high school in a lot of cases. So you have to constantly go back and touch on those again. A lot of our teachers do those through warm-ups. They might have a warm-up addressing a skill that they did 6 weeks ago, but it keeps that skill fresh on the students' minds. When we do those kinds of intervention plans where we're working with students, we make sure it's fluid, so they're not stuck in an intervention class all year long. If it's a skills deficit, once we get that skill back where it needs to be, we push that kid right back to where they have been all along, and make sure that we're not taking them out of something that they need to be in. One thing that we're doing with our high schools this year, that I've been talking to your high schools, I know y'all are doing this as well, is we have what we call an opportunity period. So we've built a time into our schedule that we can provide academic support for students. So it might be that we've taken an assessment and we've diagnosed that there's a specific skill that they need to practice. We group those students together and we have a teacher address that. It might be that they just need help getting caught up on, a small thing. But we're also using that as a time for academic enrichment. Because, those high achieving students sometimes are the ones that we forget about. So what we're doing is trying to address their needs as well. So if they're a high achieving student, we try to pull them in and do things that would further their education, stretch them, because sometimes they don't get stretched, and we need all students to grow. We need every student along the spectrum to grow. And at Cedar Ridge, when I was administrator there, we followed this idea where you assess, you dig into the data, you prescribe. We're very prescriptive. And now this was back in the old ARMP days, but we had one grade in particular, one year, we had 95% of our students, including special ed students, were proficient that year because we followed this model. We have right now central office data meetings, so our superintendent, our supervisors meet with individual principals after each assessment that comes out. We dig into their data. They bring their data to us. Of course, we've already done our analysis, and that's one of the things I do is analyze our data. And we look at the patterns that we see as a team, a leadership team, and look at the areas that, as a central office, we need to provide support to the school. And so we use that to drive what we do as well.
Describe your experience in developing and implementing curriculum and instructional programs to raise student achievement. How would you evaluate the instructional program, and how would you make changes to the instructional program?
Well, currently we're involved in the A+ College Ready initiative. That was something that we investigated as a system, and we felt like the things that they put forth, the things that they emphasized were things that we needed in our school system. Basically, it is a curriculum, not curriculum, it's a scope and sequence of the courses of study to help teachers be sure, first of all, that they address all of the standards. And each scope and sequence includes specific strategies that the teachers can try or use that have been proven over time through research to produce results. Ultimately, what we're trying to do in the 6th through 10th grades is to raise the level of rigor for all of our students so that ultimately when they get to those higher level grades that they will be involved in AP classes and have more success. So we're raising the level of rigor for all of our students in not just advanced students, all of our students 6th through 10th grade, and then we're encouraging all of our students in the higher grades to participate in AP courses. And one of their key components is that they want to bring access for these AP courses to students who don't traditionally participate. And for us, that's been our poverty group. And I can tell you that this past year we had an 89% increase in participation in AP exams across our district. And we had a 29% increase in one of our high schools for qualifying scores. Now for our students that are in poverty, what this means is that is a college course they don't have to pay for if they go post-secondary. So that's been a very important thing for us. Also, because of the increased rigor in 6th through 10th grade, it helped us achieve more growth for our students. Now, one of the things we know about poverty is, from research, students who are in poverty tend to start school with lower vocabulary. They don't know as many words. So one of the things we have to do in addressing poverty is to try to catch them up. by doing this, we feel like we're catching our students in poverty up to the level, so they're on a level playing field with everybody else in our school system, and that has helped us achieve our growth goals on the Scantron. One of the things that came out of a different program, came out of our district data meetings last year, was we noticed a pattern in the data that any of our schools that were doing accelerated reader, they were implementing it as they should, their achievement scores were higher than schools who were not implementing to fidelity. And so as a system, we decided this year that we were going to place a district-wide emphasis on all of our elementary and middle schools up through 8th grade on accelerated reader. We believe that the volume of reading impacts the students' achievement levels, and so we are implementing, focusing mainly on the volume of reading, so the word count, the number of words that they've read, and whether or not they, we're not trying to earn points, but whether or not they understand the comprehension aspect of AR. So those are the two things that we're looking at. I know some people use the points, and that's fine, and I think, I've talked to a teacher today that that's some of what is going on in Winfield, and that's great for us. We felt like for our students, we needed to focus on the volume of reading. One of the things that's, again, because I'm at Decatur Middle School as a substitute principal right now, we had a student this week that reached the 3 million word mark. Now, we've challenged all of our students to read 1 million words this year and document that through their AR test. We had a student that reached 3 million words at Decatur Middle School, and the interesting thing about this is this student came to Decatur in 6th grade as an EL student, couldn't speak English. So that is a tremendous success for that child. It's a success for the school, but it's the biggest success for that child. As an administrator, school level administrator, I've always been on the forefront of technology. Before we were one-to-one, I wanted to leverage the technology that our students have, so we did a BYOD, a bring your own device initiative in our school so that the students could use the technology they had to aid with instruction. Once we became a one-to-one school, we really focused on those devices because we had more, we could filter the content, have more control over what they were doing. When we were one-to-one at Cedar Ridge, because I wanted to leverage that technology in our building, we implemented a flipped classroom initiative, and so we encouraged our teachers. I did PD, some of it I did myself. I brought people in to explore that model, and there were some great successes out of that as well. As far as assessing programs and knowing when you need to make changes, you first have to have an honest assessment of where you are. You've got to look at your data and see if you're achieving your goals. If you're not, you have to develop those clear goals. You have to get input from all the stakeholders, from the teachers, those folks that are on the ground, to figure out what it is that needs to happen. I believe you need to make a collaborative decision. We've already kind of talked about that. You implement, and then again, the most important part is that you have to monitor your progress and reassess from time to time to be sure you're achieving your goals.
Describe your ability to cultivate a disciplined, safe, and orderly school environment.
Well, I believe you start first with clear expectations. I think that has to be key. I like the way things are spelled out in your board policy and in your student handbooks. There can be no question of what's expected of your students. And it's not just that, I'm sure like me, as a building principal, I always started out every year with class meetings, and we set the standard then from the very beginning. Students, this is what is expected of you as far as behavior goes, as far as your participation in the classroom, the expectations for your academics. And then you have to remind them of those at key moments. And those key moments, it may be you're in assembly, and before you even begin, the first thing you say is, students, I want to remind you that of the level of expectation. I did that very often, especially when we had assemblies that were a particular type. Our Veterans Day assembly every year, we wanted to be sure our students understand how important those assemblies were. So we started off talking about how important it was to the guests that we had, and that they should show the proper respect. Once you've set the standard, you have to hold everyone accountable to that standard. You can talk a good game, but if you don't, do what you say you're going to do, then you're going to have issues. You outline, you remind, and you practice. And I've I've had teachers that would practice procedures and rules with their students. There have been times when I have practiced procedures and rules with students. One of my big things was dealing with safety as assistant principal, and there were times that we would have fire drills, and we might have some students who didn't take it quite as seriously as I wanted. And so once we got everybody back to their rooms after a fire drill, then I would go to that classroom and they would practice with me. You have to expect or inspect what you expect, and sometimes you just need to practice, and it's not to call anybody out or make them feel bad. When the safety is on the line, they have to understand how important it is. One of the things that I did at Cedar Ridge was I brought we call it You've Been Caught, positive behavior recognition. And so what I did was I developed a little write-up form, and I told my teachers, we write up kids for doing bad stuff all the time, but we're going to start writing up kids for doing great things. And I got with my PTA. Every 9 weeks we would have a drawing for at the grade level. So each grade level we would have winners. And then at the end of each semester, my PTA would provide me with some really neat prizes, and we would have a whole school assembly, and I would pull out winners basically from those write-up slips, the positive write-up slips, just to recognize the great things they've done. So we would pull a name, read the name, and read what they were recognized for. And what we saw instantly was an increase in the level of respect, kids going out of their way, stopping to help each other. And we saw an immediate decrease in the number of discipline infractions. And I think the most telling thing for me was I had a supervisor, central office supervisor, had been in the building talking to me about an issue. He left the building and he called me on the phone. I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on? He just left. And he said, I just want you to know that I'm very impressed. He had students stop, hold the door, greet him, show respect, and that really impressed him. And I explained it's all part of this positive recognition. So we want to reward the things that we feel is important. As far as the safety plans go, I've already alluded to that we won the Attorney General's Safe Schools Award for 3 consecutive years. In Decatur, we follow a process, and one of the key components of that process is we do what we call a city officials, either a breakfast or luncheon twice a year, where we have our judges, our fire chief, firefighters, we have police officers, our SROs, all of our building administrators and the central office personnel, and we gather together, and it's really a chance for us to get to know each other, so that if there were an emergency or something were to happen, we include EMA, and we also include our utility department, because there are times if there's something happening at a school that you need utilities cut, and so we need to know who to talk to. And so we get together, not long, we eat lunch, we just introduce ourselves or reintroduce ourselves, and then introduce any new folks, so that if something does happen, you know that that person that's talking to you from the police department is who you need to be talking to, or they know what building administrator they need to be talking to. We work very closely with our city folks in that area.
What do you think the role of extracurricular activities and career pathways should be in the school system?
Well, I like this question.
Right
That's my world, right? As a former band director. Extracurriculars, the athletics and the fine arts and all the cheerleaders, everything, they're the most visible aspect of the school to the community at large. You may not have community members coming in and seeing your classroom, seeing what's happening there, but a lot of them are going to be at that ball game tonight, and they're going to judge the school system by what they see. And it's great that with this, I know you have a run going towards the state championship right now, and I hope it all goes well. But it just builds an energy. We were in the high school today, and it's just there's a buzz there's an excitement about what's going on, and it's amazing how those extracurricular activities can bring that kind of commitment. When this job posted and I started doing my research, of course I knew a little bit about Winfield, but I started doing my research. I was just amazed at the number of county, regional, state, national, and even some world championships that are present in this system. And that's a great thing to be proud of. And you have so many things going on with your football, your cheerleaders, your track. I'm going to tell you another thing that impressed me is seeing on your website that your athletes are going out and visiting resident care facilities and that kind of thing. So that shows me that not only are they really putting in the time and what they're doing as an extracurricular, but they're investing back in the community that gives to them so much. You know, I see a sense of pride and accomplishment. Extracurriculars, to me, they develop those leadership skills and the responsibility, the teamwork, and that grit and determination. You know, when you're out in a football game and maybe that first quarter isn't going like you want it to, do you have the perseverance to keep giving your best, keep giving your all, and in the end, win? The neat thing about all of that to me is that in the workforce committees I've been involved with, those are the soft skills that I hear employers talk about all the time that they want developed in our students. And to me, that's one of the primary things that extracurriculars do for us. I will say, as the career tech director for our school system for 2.5 years, the career pathways is a very important thing to me. You know, we take a career assessment inventory as 8th graders. We develop 4-year plans, and then we should use those 4-year plans to help guide students for the course choices that they make in high school. One of the things that we have done, our project that I worked on personally this past year, was that we developed plans for all types of careers. So if a student is interested in pre-med, they have that course pathway, and they know what courses they need to take over the next 4 years so that they're ready to go into pre-med when they go to college. And I think that's important, because you don't want a student to get to be a senior in high school and realize that they really should have had, you know, a much higher level math to qualify for the career path they wanted, and they didn't know to take it.
In Winfield City Schools, the superintendent handles the operations of a variety of programs and duties due to the size of the district. Explain your experiences with dealing with different programs such as special education, federal programs, career tech, at-risk programs, and so forth. How would you approach the budget process to ensure success during these financially challenging times?
Well, I think I've outlined many of the things that I'm involved with at the central office: curriculum instruction, career tech, Title II, the counseling and guidance, and that kind of thing. As a part of being a central office supervisor, there are all of those areas. When we go through state monitoring, those areas fall under me, and so it's my responsibility to be sure that when we go through monitoring, we're doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing. Also, I just went through OCR monitoring from the state. That is basically they come in and check ADA compliance for all our facilities. The last time Decatur went through that was 1983, and I was in high school, and so we were due. So that was an interesting process. And all the things, as special ed, I have served as an LEA, local education rep for our for our IEP meetings as the building administrator, and that's one of the things we ask administrators to do in our system. One of the proudest things in the areas that you mentioned, though, was our at-risk program. We have what we call our Horizon program at both of our high schools. And basically, we take students, when we do transcript audits, if we see students that are struggling or they're behind, they're at risk in some way, we pull them into this program, and they work one-on-one with teachers to either get caught up or to be sure that they're earning their credits. And the most important part of that for us is that we get some folks who have fallen behind, our seniors, the folks who should be seniors, to get them on track for graduation. And last year, we had 73 seniors graduate on time who would not have had it not been for this program. We also had 30 of our underclassmen who were behind as far as their progress and where they should be. We got them back on track, and we were able to they completed 335 courses, either through new credit or credit recovery. Now, we involved some virtual school components as a part of that, but it's that one-on-one coaching that makes a difference. As far as the budget process, you want to get input from all the stakeholders. You need to identify those priorities that are most important to the school system. And once you get that input from all the stakeholders, and then you want the budget to meet those priorities and meet the needs of the school system. One of the things that I like to do to help ease that budget process is look for grants and partnerships, and that's where those grants that I mentioned at the beginning have been a key component to what we do.
When a new superintendent is hired, you will want to make the transition as smooth as possible for everyone. How would you help both the educational community and the community at large adjust to the new governing style that would come with a new superintendent?
I have a former superintendent of mine, Ed Nichols, who I also consider to be a mentor. He's also a friend, but he's a mentor. And in talking with him as we discussed things regarding leadership, we sat down and we talked about a transition plan. And I've actually developed a plan that I would love to share with you guys at the end, so you can see kind of where I am as far as if I were to get this position, I'm ready to hit the ground running. I have a list of things some goals that I've already set for myself. They involve things like, for instance, before I even start, I would like to, if I were named, start meeting with individual school board members, meet with school principals, look at what it is that they need me to do to help them support their schools. I would focus on our student achievement, so we are start looking at ways that we're going to close that achievement gap that we've already talked about and raise the bar. One of the things that we're doing this year is we're doing a book study with our schools, The New Art and Science of Teaching. It's by Robert Marzano, and that is helping us in our secondary schools to have a framework, a common language. It's not a new thing, they're not new strategies, it's basically being sure that the things that we've always known and always put in our classrooms, that we're speaking the same language, that we understand that if we're talking about turn and talk, that we all understand what turn and talk is. The at-risk program, again, I would love to build something like what we're doing in Decatur here to be sure we're addressing and see if what we have in place and see how we might be able to modify that. One of the things is about communication and positive relationships. I would like to have a student advisory team made up of students at all levels that would come in and meet with me on a regular basis to advise me from their perspective of what's going on in the school system. That's that window pane model. I think I have to state, besides me being out in the schools, I need them to come tell me what's going on. You know, some of the best ideas we've had in Decatur have come from some of our high school students who've been through a lot of things, and they say, you know what, this is something we think we ought to do as a school system. Meeting with all of our school groups, our key school groups, but then building a key communicators group comprised of local community folks. So we want to be sure that those avenues of communication are open there. And then look at our program. One of the things that I would do is, as we meet with faculty groups and different groups, is to go through an exercise where we look at what's going on in our school system, find out those things that we need to start, those things that we need to stop, and the things that we need to continue or improve. And that will be a very important part of the process as we try to shape the rest of the year and then prepare for the next year. As far as the interaction with the board, again, I would like to establish that communication plan so that we know what the expectations are from both sides, and so that I would be able to be sure that you're comfortable with the level of communication.
What methods of communicating with parents have you found most effective, and how would you encourage parental involvement? And then how do you plan to communicate with the public on matters of school concern?
Again, some of that I will address in this transition plan. You know, as far as the parent involvement, I love working with PTA groups. At Cedar Ridge, I had a very active PTA group. They were very supportive of the things that we did in our schools. Athletic boosters, I would want to be sure to touch base with them. Our band booster, community boards, and our civic clubs. I'm a member of Kiwanis, and I think it's important to get out, interact with all those. I know I've seen Lions Club signs around Winfield, so I'm assuming that's a very active group here. Opportunities to go speak to those groups to let them know what's going on in our school system. I like direct communication whenever possible. I like to get out and meet folks. I want to be involved in the community. Again, being out, it opens a door for folks to come up and talk to you and let you know what's going on with them. One of the neatest things I've seen on your website, and I don't know who does it, but there's a publication, looks like a newspaper, a school newspaper that's going out, and looks like it's done by students. And I see that it's focusing the message of the school system. I think that is a great tool to get the message out. In Decatur, we have a school cast system, so we can send out emails or text or phone messages to everyone that we need to all at once. And if there's not a system like that, I think that's one of the things that we need to explore. For us, it's a safety thing. For school closures, or we need to inform parents on a very timely basis, it's an easy way to do that. One of the things that we do every year, and this again is one of those events that our Chamber of Commerce sponsors, is that each superintendent in Morgan County has what they call a State of the Schools address. The Chamber sponsors it as a fundraiser for them, but it's a chance for the superintendent to inform the public about what's going on in the school system. So they actually give an address like the President's State of the Union address. This would be the Superintendent's State of the Schools address. That would be something that I would want to explore.
Based on the fact that the new superintendent will start in the middle of the year, what are the first few things that you are going to do if you are hired as superintendent? And what do you view as our system's greatest potential for improvement?
Again, I've sat down, and I hate to keep without you having this week, but I hope that you'll have a chance to take a look at this transition plan, because I have outlined step by step the things that I think are key things to take to do right off the bat, and that would be basically my checklist to you of where I am, what we're doing. I would, inform you of my progress along the way in that transition plan. Communication, I think, is one of the first big steps. Building culture, a positive culture, being out there, working with groups, let them get to know me, and I would get to know them. And I think that's the positive climate, positive culture. Even though it takes time, you have to start immediately and get on that. As far as potential, I noticed that in the paper that there's a National Merit Semifinalist from here, and I know y'all are extremely proud of that, and I would be too. I would like to capitalize on that quality of instruction, the quality of the students here, and see what kind of supports we can put in place to build on that success. And I know you have quality things going on. I think one of the first things I need to do is to address climate. I think positive climate. I'm an encourager, a motivator. Positive climate is one of those things that I really like to do. At times I have served as an interim music minister in different churches. When churches are searching for a permanent choir director, I would go in and serve as an interim. And one of the processes that we do when we do that is that we take people where they are. Sometimes there's some hurt feelings about some things that have happened. Just to love on folks, get them back on board, get them really focused on the mission, and that would be a thing that I think that we would want to look at here, so that there is a positive. We capitalize on that tradition of excellence that's here, and remind us of what we want to be and what we want to accomplish, and be sure that we are our own best ambassadors. And that's something that we focus on in Decatur. We tell teachers all the time, we've got to be sure we're not our own worst enemy. And so we have to get out there and tout our programs, let people know what's going on in our school system. I think another area that I would want to look at immediately is to strengthen the business and industry partnerships, relationships there, developing that workforce pipeline. That comes from my work with the Chamber and Economic Development as the Career Tech Director in our system. We started a program. I had a grant with AIDT where we actually brought in industry instructors to teach our students some identified skilled trades that were needed in our area. We set that program up like a simulated workplace. They actually came in before our school day began. They had to clock in, they had to clock out. We set it up. They went through the same safety training that our industry folks go through. They were trained by our industry representatives. We actually had them certified as adjunct instructors through the State Department of Education, so that they were able to work with our kids. They had to go through the same background check. They were actually funded by industry, so that we weren't paying for that, but it was a partnership, because that gave the industry the first look at potential employees for their businesses when they came out. I think we need to look at instating or reinstating Career Tech funding. That comes from my time as a Career Tech Director. It's incredible things that we are able to do in our school system through that, and I think that's one of the areas that we would want to capitalize. I know there's a great industry base here, and that would be one of those things where we would be able to prepare students who want to go straight into the workforce out of high school. There are great jobs that pay great wages, and they're available, and that would be a great way to connect those to that. If you reestablish that, you would want to look at your regional workforce data to drive those the programs. I'll share with one of you earlier today that in our area, the health field is one of those major needs. And so we have a health sciences program that is our fastest growing. We have fabulous instructors and we have more students signing up. We've had to add instructors because so many students are interested in that area. That is a very important area. And I think we need to, again, be sure that those soft skills that employers are looking for, they don't have to just be in career-based classes. We want them in all of our classes. You know, can we show up on time? Can we follow the instructions? Can we look somebody in the eye and talk to them? And can we think critically is one thing that I hear over and over again. And that is an area that I think we can focus on across the district.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I know I'm long-winded, I apologize.
No,
I love talking about this kind of stuff.
So our final question is, do you have any questions for the board members?
I do not, but I do want to tell you, first of all, thank you so much again for the opportunity to come meet with you guys. I've been so impressed. You've been so gracious, and I won't need to eat for a couple of days because y'all fed me so well since I've been here. But I just want to reiterate to you that when this job posted, first of all, I was excited that this job was open from my perspective because I am familiar with Winfield. But, you know, whenever a job like this posts that you're interested in a superintendent position, the first thing you do is you start picking up the phone and calling folks. You start asking the people you know and trust, hey, tell me about Winfield City Schools. Every time I've asked that question, all I've heard is that is a fabulous school system. I've heard it's the dream job. I've heard it's the place to be. And everything that I've seen today matches that. I mean, I have just been very, just blown away by the excitement of your teachers. The students are just fabulous. One of the favorite things that happened today was we went into a classroom and one of the teachers said, all right, students, tell Dr. Davis and his wife something they need to know about Winfield. And they all raised their hand. They all were ready to share and stood up and just told them fabulous things. Oh, you got to go to Mule Days. Oh, great, I've been there. That's good. I mean, they shared so many positive things about the school and just were so excited. And I just want you to know that doesn't happen everywhere. You have a lot to be proud of in this community and this school system. I just want to thank you for the chance to be here today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We appreciate your being here. We appreciate your efforts in answering our questions. We hope that it's been a good experience for you. It has for us.
Yes.
Okay? And we thank you and your wife, Dan. We thank you for being here. We thank you for sharing a little bit of you with us. Okay? And so, with that being said, we're going to conclude this portion of our interviewing process. We've got a little bit of refreshments outside for you.
You got to eat a little bit more.
We've got to feed you a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, that is a tradition in small southern towns.
Right, that's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, and that's the way we show our hospitality. But we thank you for being here. We thank you of showing an interest in Winfield.
Yes.
We hope that our board has answered your questions. We hope that you're comfortable with the way we have presented ourselves. And we welcome any further questions or anything, and we welcome any information you want to give us for consideration.
I would just love to share this transition plan with you if that's okay.
Okay.